The Fellowship of the Ring, or more specifically Frodo Baggins and the Ring. They had a few stopovers and they were always of significance. For instance, Tom Bombadil's house at Bree, where they picked up Strahd and some shady stalkers. Rivendell, of course, and Lothlorien is where Frodo had his true path set. All very key to his journey, but what if in Moria there had been another significant meeting besides that of Gandalf and the Balrog? What if down in the depths of the misty mountains and in the dark dank of Moria, the Fellowship had come upon the isolated dwarf colony of Balin and his expedition? Ahoy there, what's happening, my dudes? Don't actually introduce yourself like this though in the video. Right, well, anyway, welcome to the channel. This is Gone with Gandalf, and every single Friday-ish I try and make these lore videos, so if you enjoy them, please give it a like. Balin was of Thorin's company that successfully, with a little help, succeeded in retaking Erebor in 2941 of the Third Age. Under similar circumstances, he wished to set out to reclaim Moria, or Khazad-dûm, for the Longbeards. It's a special place for all dwarves, as it is where Durin decided to reside after leaving the Halls of Awakening in Gundabad, and yet it has since been abandoned and overrun by orcs as the Balrog known as Durin's Bane routed the dwarves in 1981 of the Third Age, about 1,000 years prior to the Lord of the Rings. How would this have been so bad for the quest for the One Ring? Well, the One Ring is rather devious, as we all know, and it does always seek to find a way into the hands of the enemy. Whilst it has no power to dominate a dwarf in quite in the same way as it could for a man, give them withering life, kind of what happens to the ring wraiths, it can still corrupt if given the time. The ring may influence events so that it all falls into its own favour. Perhaps the Fellowship has some difficulties getting past the colony. The ring wants to be found, remember. Feeling the draw of Sauron, it can manufacture such an escape, and if it feels like it needs to, obviously. And the dwarves may like some fancy treasure. Something to ponder. As you well know, everyone needs to be of a royal line of some sort to be claiming, I don't know, even a roll of toilet paper in Middle-earth. So what claim did Balin have to lead such an expedition? Well, Balin was of the Longbeard clan and is a descendant of Durin. He's a third cousin of Thorin Oakenshield and Dane Ironfoot, in case you're wondering, who was also the current king under the mountain. It was Dane, though, who way back in 2799 that advised that the dwarves should not attempt to recolonize Moria following their victorious campaign against the orcs of the Misty Mountains, for he knew that the Balrog was still within. Balin was there too, but near 200 years later, in 2989 of the Third Age, he was given leave to go and give it a go. The treasures of Erebor, they were significant, but only Moria had mithril. Only Moria. And, you know, it perhaps may have been that Balin wished to find the Ring of Thror, which was suspected by the dwarves to still be in that area. Of course, it wasn't. It was given over to Thrain. 5 years passed as the dwarven colony began to thrive, and the folks back home will have heard news of this. But it was in 2994 then that things took a turn for the worse. Balin was shot by an orc arrow as he gazed into the Mirror alone, and this was a precursor to the scores of orcs that would assault the Eastern Gate as the dwarves were driven back and into Moria, losing the bridge not long thereafter. However, what if Balin had been wearing a mithril garb and had not fallen on that day? The dwarves had fallen back into Moria and now were in a constant struggle for supremacy for the gate and the bridge to retrieve supplies. The gruesome sight that greeted the Fellowship at the West Gate can be omitted too for the purpose of this video, as Oin had not thought to seek an escape and be killed by the Watcher. By reimagining the timeline like so, we can still explain as to why Gimli and Gloin came to Rivendell, asking about their kinsfolk who had travelled to Moria about 30 years ago. Well then, the Fellowship stumble into Moria and quietly creep through. Imagine the surprise when they are discovered by the colony. Balin would surely be confused by this travelling band are so secretive of their cause, given that Gimli and Gandalf are among them. Perhaps there would have been a similar situation to when Faramir captured Frodo and Sam. Since there are friends among them, I feel like they wouldn't have been held captive like that. Perhaps strongly dissuaded against, carrying on with their journey. Balin would have been curious as to the urgency of the mission for the Fellowship. Like, why should they pass? You can't really tell him that they are escorting a ring of power. The ring of power. If they did, would this awaken a jealous greed for the treasure within Balin? He had already come to Moria, in the hope of reclaiming the ring of Thror, one of the seven. So would this have posed a much greater threat and a much better solution for the One Ring?
The only way out is over the bridge, and to get there they must battle against the goblins, and presumably this cacophonous assault, or perhaps the proximity to the One, might awaken the Balrog at last. Gandalf once again goes down fighting to not alter the timeline down the track, and Balin is killed heroically to not cause the succession of the line of Longbeards, following the death of Dane, to have any infringements. At this point, the remainders of the dwarvish colonizers, if there were any, decide to flee Moria with an intact Book of Mazarbul to return one day with more force.
On the face of it, this actually doesn't seem so bad, and if I couldn't muster my vocabulary down to tell me something else to say, I'd say it was quite nice even. Now, in Middle-earth there are several instances of chance encounters, or so-called. One of these would be Gandalf meeting Thorin in the Prancing Pony Inn in Bree, and more on this in just a moment.
This meeting wouldn't really serve the purpose of the story though, if Deus Ex Machina or divine intervention is the main goal here, to see Gandalf the Grey go Super Saiyan, unlock all of the power at his disposal to defeat the Balrog and defend the Ringbearer, then you don't need the dwarves. If the goal is to secretly pass through Moria without being heard or seen by the enemy to keep the location of the ring secret, then going through the mines with a dwarven escort isn't on the cards.
The One Ring, it wants to be found. In every instance of the ring having a layover at a friendly destination, there's always a moment of decision where Strider, Galadriel or Faramir, they have to test their desire for the One Ring, okay? Does Balin need to be added to an endless queue of people being offered the ring? It's kind of like, hey, do you want this ring? Do you fancy having it?
It was good that the expedition of Balin failed. Oh, the horror. I think it would have convoluted the Moria storyline. The journey through Moria for me personally is exciting due to the trepidation and the anticipation of some evil lurking around each nook and cranny. To come upon some friendly faces in there would ruin the immersion for me personally, for being ever so haphazard. And would it give some kind of viewer or reader fatigue later on when Frodo and Sam are captured by Faramir, perhaps a feeling of deja vu, all for needless plot development?
You'd really have to squeeze in another 15 minutes of action just to introduce new characters and promptly kill them off immediately after. It's for this very reason that characters such as Tom Bombadil, Glorfindel and Prince Imrahil were omitted too. Well, for the films at least.
Finally then, a chance encounter. A most important one would be lost, as Gollum is supposed to begin trailing the Nine Walkers in Moria. He had fled into the mines for fear of the Ringwraiths, who had orders to kill him after orchestrating the attack on Thranduil to secure his escape. He fled into Moria and tried to get out of the West Gate to find it closed to him, thus it was by mere chance he was saved when the Fellowship passed him by, and the lure of the ring gave him the strength to follow them out of the East Gate.
Gollum is the destroyer of the One Ring. Well, kind of, anyway. But then again, he was also able to tail the Fellowship out of Lothlorien, so, meh. There you go. I asked the question and then promptly blew it up into smithereens. So I hope that you still enjoy this video. Next time, I think I'm going to delve a little bit into those tests that the One Ring proposed for characters such as Strider, Faramir and Galadriel and how they overcame them. So if you have any other suggestions, then feel free to pop them down in the comments. But for now, thank you very much for watching, and I am Game with Gandalf. Good day.